Kikoki. Order. Order. Joe Platt to move the motion.
I beg to move that this House has considered improving transport connectivity in the North West. And Ms McFay, it is an honour to serve under your chairship. So I am delighted to see so many members here today. The issue at hand affects many constituencies in the North West, including mine in Lee and Atherton. So Lee and Atherton, once a beacon of industrial activity, now lies between the great cities of Manchester and Liverpool. With our main source of industry gone, we are now part of a commuter belt alongside constituencies such as St Helens, Warrington, Wigan and Salford. So our road networks, originally designed around mills and factories, now struggle to cope with the ever-increasing volume of traffic. And I know the same is true in our neighbouring regions of Merseyside, Cheshire, Lancashire and Cumbria. A lack of connectivity in one place affects another. So congestion that starts in Lee doesn't just disappear when crossing a border. It blocks the roads of our nearest neighbours. The rush hour struggle to connect to our motorway or city networks often means that the A580 East Lancs Road is a source of constant annoyance for many. And when asked about public transport and without rail or Metrolink connection in the centre of Lee, the answer is that the same buses are stuck in the same traffic, all part of the ever-increasing frustration. So the lack of efficient transport links is a key barrier to growth. So Lee ranks in the top 1% of the country for transport-related social exclusion. So meaning people are unable to participate in routine everyday activities because of a lack of viable travel options. And a 2024 report from Transport for the North highlighted that people in the North West with access to a car can reach nearly 6 times as many jobs as those who rely on public transport. Poor connectivity, limited infrastructure and an over-reliance on cars leads to high levels of social isolation. I'll give way.
For Lee and Atherton for bringing this forward, and I have to say as well, welcome back to the House, and I wish her well. And this issue is very important. The Honourable Lady has outlined the issues for the North West, but does the Honourable Member agree that social isolation, in particular in rural areas, is exacerbated by infrequent, costly public transport? And if we in this United Kingdom are to be serious about addressing mental health concerns in our rural communities, then we need to be able to bring them out of isolation physically as well as mentally. Does the Honourable Lady agree? Thank you.
I thank the Honourable Member for that intervention, and yes, I do agree, and particularly those that are vulnerable due to age, poverty and disability. It will have a huge negative impact on their life chances. So this stark disparity underlines the need for better transport systems and new road networks, ones that boost economic productivity and ensure fairness and opportunity for all. Without the necessary infrastructure, these benefits will remain out of reach for far too many. And the narrative often goes that to succeed, you must leave. And I am determined to change that story. Yeah. While we are a proud community, we are often overlooked when it comes to investment. Growth goes where the growth already is. So this stifles the potential for outside business investment and growth for existing businesses. So despite the many positives that Lee and Atherton have to offer, we still see many young people with great potential leaving to seek opportunities elsewhere. So, for example, it can take over an hour and 40 minutes to travel from Lee to Manchester Airport by public transport, while a car journey takes only 30 minutes if you're lucky, and that's not in rush hour. So that's just covering 18 miles. The huge difference cannot be overlooked, especially given the economic and employment opportunities offered by Manchester Airport, which provides thousands of jobs to the region. And because of poor transport links, many of my constituents are missing out on these opportunities or have no other option but to use their cars, which then obviously doesn't help with emissions. And it's not just jobs and growth opportunities either. Speaking with our borough-wide police force, response times in the Wigan Borough are slower than in other Greater Manchester areas, and this is due to congestion. Our local health trust operating sites in Wigan and Leigh routinely factors in an hour's travel time for consultants and staff moving between sites. It all adds up. This is an injustice we must rectify. And I'm grateful to Wigan Council for recognising this issue and their commitments to improving this situation. This aligns with the government's broader ambitions around education, skills, growth and revitalisation. When questions about strengthening our higher education offer are always met with, but how will students from the wider region get there? Or when, for Manchester United women's home games at the wonderful Leigh Sports Village, the challenge is, how do we get fans to the game? We have an issue. We need more train and Metrolink routes within our region. Specifically, I believe it is time to make the case for a Metrolink connection to Leigh. But for our wider region, we need to improve our train frequency. We need better accessibility at stations, increase the capacity of car parks at train stations, and expand park and ride facilities for key transport routes. And I am sure honourable members here will speak about that within the debate. But it's not all doom and gloom. Our Greater Manchester Mayor has done much to improve connectivity across the city region, including Leigh's famous guided busway, the V1 in Leigh and the V2 in Atherton. These services have been incredibly successful, with usage exceeding expectations. And with the commitment of a £2 bus fare cap, more people are using our B network more than ever. The next step is to fully integrate towns like Leigh into Greater Manchester's transport system, making it easier for people to travel seamlessly across the region and unlocking the growth potential of the North West. The 2024 boundary changes have brought 2 train stations into the constituency. That's Atherton and Hagfold. This is a positive step forward. And additionally, the recent government announcement for the reopening of Goulburn Station brings much needed investment into the area. And I want to thank Greater Manchester Mayor Andy Burnham, Transport for Greater Manchester, Wigan Council and our local councillors for their continued work to make that campaign a reality. And I'm also thrilled by the government's recent announcement that Leigh is one of the 75 places eligible for the Plan for Neighbourhoods, benefiting from £20 million worth of funding over the next 10 years. So with this funding, we have a real opportunity to build upon our strengths and unlock the potential of our high street. However, it is important to note that Leigh remains one of the largest towns in the country without a Metrolink or train connection. There is a clear gap in our infrastructure that must be addressed. So we must focus on linking not just Greater Manchester, but also Merseyside, Lancashire, Cheshire and Cumbria, and all the towns in between, including my constituency. These often overlooked towns, rural or coastal, are vital to the region's growth and success. A strategic cross-boundary approach is essential if we are to grow a region that benefits everyone. So I ask the Minister if he will support us in this approach, and also if he will work with me to make the case for Metrolink into Leigh as part of a connected transport system that not just benefits Leigh, but also my nearest neighbours. And it is vital that we focus on a strategic approach to managing connectivity in the North West and connecting these areas to growth. Only then can we all thrive and fully participate in the growth and prosperity in the entire region. Thank you.
There's a lot of members wanting to speak, and I do want to accommodate everybody and get them all in. Front bench have agreed the opposition spokespeople to be 5 minutes each, but the Minister will be his full 10 minutes, so that will give everybody 4 minutes. So, Lisa Smart. Oh, I will also say the question is that the House has considered improving transport connectivity in the North West. Lisa Smart.
Thank you very much, Ms McVeigh. It's a pleasure to have you in the chair, and I really congratulate the Honourable Member for Lee and Atherton on securing a debate on this really important topic for all of our constituents. It's about transport connectivity, but that really means it's about economic growth, and it's about opening up the world for our constituents so that they can make choices about their lives to allow them to fulfil their potential. Reliable, affordable and accessible public transport is not just a convenience, it is an essential pillar of our economy, of our communities and of our future. Yet for too long, the North West has suffered from underinvestment, unreliable rail services and disconnected transport networks that leave too many of our constituents struggling to get to work, to school or to essential services. And that's why today I'm asking the government for three things. First, we need more frequent and reliable rail services with simple, affordable fares that encourage people back onto our trains. Second, I urge the government to work with Stockport Council and the Combined Authority in Greater Manchester to bring Metrolink or tram train to my constituency. And third, the government needs to make public transport the default for my constituents by expanding current bus and rail connections. Many in my community and in the surrounding areas of Greater Manchester and beyond will remember the absolute chaos towards the end of last year, when almost every day commuters on Northern operated trains would see swathes of red cancellation notice. I received dozens of emails from constituents talking about how they couldn't rely on the train to get to work or to pick up their children from school. Some even told me they were having to reject job offers because the train was just too unreliable. Since the pandemic, constituents who commute on the Rosehill to Manchester Piccadilly rail line have faced a really irregular timetable of services, and passenger numbers across the North West have struggled to recover to those levels. And I absolutely welcome the plans to integrate our trains, our trams and our buses, and I really look forward to the streamlining of ticketing this will offer. It would, however, be remiss of me not to mention the fact that Metrolink does not yet extend into any part of Stockport. We've got a brilliant new interchange. It's Metrolink ready, but we've got no indication of when Metrolink will be ready for Stockport. We have even less of an idea whether Metrolink or tram train will eventually reach out into the towns and villages in my constituency. Many of my residents have to rely on buses to get where they want to go, some of which are not operated by the B network, because we're right on the edge of the North West, right on the edge of Greater Manchester. And we need more frequent bus services that link to our rail services, but there's going to be something that stops them from reaching their potential. And that's the ridiculous level of traffic on the roads in my constituency. Whether it's the A6 or Stockport Road, journeys that can take 20 minutes normally can take over an hour in the morning and evening rush hour. Public transport is the obvious solution to this, and we should be making it easier for those who can take the tram or the train, so that the roads are freed up for those who can't. Trams and trains offer commuters the ability to bypass that rush hour congestion in a way that buses can't always. TfGM has ambition to restore regular passenger rail services on the Stockport to Staley Bridge line. This provides a unique opportunity to significantly reduce rush hour journey times for commuters heading to Stockport from my constituency. The rail line from Bredbury to Piccadilly crosses over the Stockport to Staley Bridge line near Reddish Vale, and I've really encouraged the Department for Transport and TfGM to explore the possibility of linking these two lines, whether that's the form of a new interchange station or a cord linking the two. The message from my constituents is clear. They need public transport that works for them. This means a railway system that people can rely on, bus routes that connect communities rather than isolate them, and investment in new transport links that will drive economic growth. Thank you. A whole 3 seconds.
Graham Stringer.
Pleasure to see you in the chair. In the few minutes that are available to me, I'd just like to put transport in the North West into a perspective, and I wouldn't like anything I say to be taken as a criticism of the Mayor or Transport for Greater Manchester. The B Network, for instance, which is an excellent scheme, has just taken Greater Manchester to the situation that London has been in for the last 45 years, and we see that as progress. It's quite simply a disgrace. As the Honourable Lady opposite has just said, investment in transport is vital for economic growth. But when we look at the national objectives, as we have seen for the last forever, really, since the Second World War, when it comes to those objectives, more money is going into London and the South East than into the North West. And some of the successes that Transport for Greater Manchester have been against. They've had to fight the Department of Transport to get extra investment in Metrolink, had to fight Labour and Conservative ministers to get money into investment. And it means that the North West, where there is great potential, in fact you get more out of it if you invest in transport links in the North West than you will in the South East, because what you're effectively doing when you invest in London in the South East, all transport investment creates jobs and growth, but you're then effectively subsidising congestion, because you get so much congestion in London and the South East, you need more investment afterwards. That is not the situation in Greater Manchester and the North West. So I'm not against the Lower Thames crossing, where £750 million have already been spent on assessing whether it's of any use whatsoever. But that money would benefit transport in Greater Manchester and jobs and investment for the whole country much more than it's going to do in the Lower Thames area. We have suffered that we're not getting High Speed 2 at the moment, and I think the campaign to get the rail link from Birmingham to Manchester and Manchester Airport should continue. It is extraordinary the billions that have been spent on high-speed rail from London to Birmingham, mainly in tunnels.
Will the honourable gentleman give way on that point?
I will do.
Would the honourable gentleman agree with me that some of the benefits of HS2 have been masked by the name High Speed 2, and actually one of the main benefits of HS2 is capacity that we desperately need in the railway?
My honourable friend is precisely right. The real case for HS2, as it's always going to be called, I'm afraid, was capacity. And we are not getting that extra capacity between Birmingham and Manchester without HS2. And that capacity will, if it was to happen, and it should happen, would lead to a necessity of extra investment in the rail system, east-west and internally within Greater Manchester. So it would lead to more investment at that time. So we need to come paying for that. All we've got at the moment is an extension to the London Underground system, which will benefit London and Birmingham. The Honourable Lady previously in the speech mentioned Metrolink to Stockport. I agree with her. For the first time, really nearly for a quarter of a century, we don't have viable plans that we know are going to happen, even if we have to carry on fighting government ministers and the Department of Transport for the next stage. I'd like trams to go to Middleton, obviously. I represent part of Middleton. But I agree, trams going to Stockport and other parts of the conurbation, maybe Lears as well, would have transport and economic developments. So I think we have to keep campaigning and make the case that bucks spent in Greater Manchester on transport are going to get us more than being spent in London and the South East.
Collins.
Thank you, Mr Morrison. It's a pleasure to serve here today under your chairship, and I thank the Honourable Member for Lee and Atherton for securing this important debate. My constituency is semi-urban and semi-rural, and without good public transport, my constituents can't get around, and the visitors that we so enjoy in our area can't get in. A lot of people in my community struggle with access to services like GPs, hospital appointments, and also getting to work. That creates more pressure on services such as patient transport services and GP home visits. It also affects the nature of my constituency, with an ageing population and fewer young families able to move in. My rural businesses and organisations that represent them, such as the Sedbergh Economic Partnership, have told me that transport connectivity in the rural areas is a massive bar to growth because they cannot get the staff that they need to expand their businesses. So Sedbergh itself is actually struggling at the minute. They've had a bus service change. Bus service is now less accessible and less frequent. At my suggestion, Sedbergh have actually set up a bus users group. I'm a big fan of buses and I'm a big fan of bus users groups. In Lancashire, we have an absolutely fantastic bus users group, the Lancaster and District Bus Users Group, of which I'm a proud member. And I'd like to put on record my thanks to the government for their investment in the bus services, £27 million in Lancashire and £4.2 million in Westland and Furness. And I really hope to see my local authorities take on the new powers that the government are going to give them to make sure we have those rural bus services that serve my constituents, that work together, that fit together and fit in with people's lives. I'm also a big fan of trains. In my constituency, I have the highest mainline train station in England, in Dent, and it's very beautiful. It's not actually in Dent Village, which causes some confusion. We also have fantastic stations like Garsdale Head, which is absolutely beautiful, as the Honourable Member for Westmoreland and Lonsdale will know, and Arnside. But we do have real problems with accessibility at train stations. So older people, people with disabilities can't get the train when the train turns up. And what's really difficult for those areas is because they're not areas of huge population, they struggle to access grant services such as the Access for All funds. And I think there's a real inequity in how some allocations are made for improvements to stations. Finally, I want to talk a little bit about active travel. Active travel is really important, and all it means is moving yourself around, whether you're wheeling in a wheelchair, cycling on a bike or walking around. It's really good for your health. I know, spending more time in London with the fantastic public transport service we have here, I walk a lot more. I've actually lost weight since the election, which I think is unheard of, because I'm walking so much. And that just shows the benefits that an integrated public transport system can have, that proper transport connectivity can have for health. And I want to highlight one particular project in my constituency, the Loon Valley Greenway. This is a visionary project to get a path that people can walk, wheel or cycle along from the coast at Morecambe right into the Yorkshire Dales National Park. Currently it goes from Morecambe via up to Bulbeck near Caton via Lancaster, but there's a real ambition to not only go from coast to the Yorkshire Dales National Park, but also to link it up with public transport systems so that people visiting our area and people living and working in my constituency can have access to the countryside and access to good public transport. And I'd love to invite the Minister to come along and visit. Thank you, Mr Morrison.
Thank you, Mr Morrison. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, and I'd like to thank firstly the member for Lee and Atherton for securing the debate. I will start by laying out the case I wish to make in simple terms. The North West public transport is not up to scratch. Specifically, our railway journeys are nowhere near good enough. They're holding our region's economy back, and we need change. Take my Southport constituency, for instance. There is no direct public transport link from one side of the constituency to the other, despite it being overwhelmingly urban. Try to get from Birkdale to Rufford on public transport, a journey of 10 miles, and you'll get told that a single ticket will cost you £21, it'll take you 1 hour 11 minutes, and you'll have to change trains 3 times. It's literally 10 miles away. You'd be almost quicker to walk it. Even the rail services that we do have are incredibly unreliable. Just this morning, at 6:47 a.m, a message was sent out on social media from Merseyrail saying, due to a train fault, some services on the Southport line face cancellations. The first reply said, another day, another train fault. The second reply blamed the politicians. The service to Manchester is even worse. In November, There were no services at all on Sundays for 3 weeks in a row. Also in November, more than a quarter of all train journeys to Manchester were either delayed or cancelled. And when the trains do turn up, passengers are greeted with what the Chief Exec of Northern Rail has called some of the worst performing rolling stock in the country. This cannot be allowed to continue. The constituency's connectivity has also been directly impacted by the well-known 1960s cuts to railway services. The closure of 2 simple railway curves in Burscough, just outside my constituency, mean that the 7-mile journey from Ormskirk to Southport, 7-mile journey, takes 85 minutes by train, and it means that the notional 20-mile journey to Preston takes you via a change at Wigan, which is itself 20 miles out of your way. We're lucky on this, though, because unlike in other parts of the country, the railway curves at Burscough were never built over. They're still there, just overgrown and unloved. An estimated figure of £30 million has been placed on the cost of reinstating them, which would once again connect up the towns of Merseyside and West Lancashire and strengthen the travel to work routes, promoting the economic growth that we all want so desperately. It's not all bad, though. The Liverpool City Region Combined Authority is maintaining the £2 bus fare cap, including in Southport. We're moving forward with trials of bus franchising across the region. And despite problems, Merseyrail still receives the second highest overall customer satisfaction levels in the country in the latest surveys. And despite the perhaps element of empire building here, I do welcome the fact that our line to Manchester is set to be brought into the Greater Manchester B network in 2028. It will finally allow a one tap-in, tap-out ticketing system integrating with the Manchester systems. And these positives point the way, because we need more devolution on transport and we need more statutory powers for the coming Lancashire Combined Authority to make sure that the rest of the North West can link up the way that my constituency already is.
Jonathan Hinder.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairship this morning, albeit slightly unexpected, and I thank my honourable friend, the member for Lee and Atherton, for securing this important and clearly popular debate. I'll focus my remarks on the rail network this morning. In Pendle and Clitheroe, slow and unreliable rail services, along with disjointed connections, cause daily frustrations for my constituents. These issues create barriers to work, education, healthcare, and ultimately hold our local economy back. In my constituency, we have 2 rail routes. The Colne to Preston line operates just 1 train per hour, taking an hour and 15 minutes to cover only 25 miles. The Clitheroe to Manchester line is no better. Again, just 1 train per hour, an hour and 20 minutes to travel just 30 miles. If a train is cancelled in the southeast of England, there's often another coming 10 or 15 minutes away. Whereas if 1 train of an hourly service is cancelled, your whole day is ruined. These routes are not fit for purpose, and we all know that this level of service would just not be tolerated on routes going into London. If we want to unlock the potential of our towns, we need investment to increase frequency, cut journey times, and improve service reliability. Would it be so impossible to have 2 trains per hour on these routes and speed them up a bit? More rolling stock required? Yes. More staff required? Yes. But can it be done with the right political will? Of course it can. And the economic benefits would be profound. Right now, the connection times don't even make sense. If you took the slow train from Colne to Preston this morning, hoping to travel south, perhaps to the capital city, you'll be waiting nearly an hour at Preston for that train, once you've got that slow train itself. If public transport is to be a viable alternative to car travel, its services and timetables must be coordinated and designed around the needs of passengers. And right now, that just simply isn't the case. In the longer term, reinstating the Colne to Skipton rail link would be a game changer for east-west travel and our local economy. Reopening this 11-mile stretch, the track bed of which has been protected, that's a theme from the previous speaker, would open up huge opportunities for jobs and businesses. It's a project that would dramatically improve economic prospects for deprived areas across East Lancashire, well beyond my constituency, and I'll continue to campaign for its reinstatement. Mr Chairman, regional inequality in our country is stark, and nowhere is this more obvious than in public transport. Time and again, we've seen rail projects prioritised in the South East, while towns across the north are left waiting for long overdue upgrades. Now, I know the government understands this, but I now urge them to be bold, to act now and commit to delivering a transport system that truly works for the North West. Thank you.
Contributions will be similarly brief to allow as many colleagues in as possible. Navendi Mishra.
Thank you, Dr. Morrison. It's a pleasure to serve on your chairship. Can I also congratulate my good friend from Lee on securing this debate? It's clearly very popular. I'd like to refer to my register of interest before I start in terms of my trading and membership, particularly donations from RMT to my constituency, Labour Party. I'd like to add on the points made by several colleagues in terms of Metrolink tram network and extending it into Stockport. I would like to see it extended into Hazel Grove, as my neighbouring MP from Hazel Grove made the point. And I would also like to see Metrolink extended into Stockport Town Centre. I understand Greater Manchester Combined Authority and Stockport Council are developing a strategic outline business case which should complete by autumn this year. And I want to see the work start as soon as possible, and I would welcome a meeting with the Minister as soon as possible, perhaps with my colleague from Hazel Grove, to discuss this. I'm very limited by time, so a couple of points I want to make. The first being Stockport Railway Station. Stockport Railway Station recorded almost 3.8 million entries and exits in the last reporting period. It is a major hub for Greater Manchester and the North West region. I'm aware several of my colleagues from Greater Manchester, in fact, travel to Stockport on a Monday to take the train to London because it's easier, and several local services often have poor connectivity. But unfortunately, the station itself is in a dire state. We have roofs that leak often, outdated toilets, the lifts are frequently faulty, particularly disadvantaging passengers with mobility issues or heavy luggage. So I want to see real investment in Stockport Station. I know Network Rail and Avanti are doing some work, but we need to be bold in terms of investing in that station. There are about 48 staff employed by Avanti at Stockport Station. I know almost all of them, if not all, and many of them share my concerns around the state of the station. I'm grateful to all of them. I think a colleague from the North West made the point earlier about step-free access at railway stations. I think the Access for All scheme is just far too slow. It's not ambitious enough. And sadly, 3 out of 5 rail stations in my constituency, Brinnington, Heaton Chapel and Reddish South, do not have step-free access. So I want to see that addressed as soon as possible. I also want to use this valuable time to pay tribute to Nathaniel Yates from my constituency. He has done a lot of work on step-free access. He's a champion when it comes to public transport, and I just want to place on record my thanks to him for not just his work in Stockport, but across Greater Manchester. I would also like to mention that Reddish South Station in my constituency has a train service once a week. So every Saturday morning there's a train that arrives and goes into Stockport. A few minutes later, that same train comes from Stockport via Reddish South, and in the last reporting period, Reddish South recorded 80 passengers in the entire year. And friends of Reddish South Station that are quite active on this issue, I meet them frequently. I want to pay tribute to all their work, but we need to address the situation when it comes to Reddish South Station. The increase in housing around Reddish South, the change in Reddish over the years, means that we need to have proper services to that station to improve connectivity into Stockport Town Centre, but also into Manchester and other parts of the North West. The last point I want to make is, before COVID, we used to have a direct service from Stockport Station into Manchester Airport. That service was withdrawn during the pandemic and sadly hasn't returned. So often we have a situation where you have to go into Manchester Piccadilly, then wait to change a train. And many passengers who travel to Manchester Airport travel with heavy luggage, and it's not an ideal situation. So we need to see that service reinstated as soon as possible. And I like to end on a positive point that I welcome bus franchising. Mayor Burnham has done a lot of good work. There's obviously a lot more to do on public transport, but I'm very grateful to colleagues at Transport for Greater Manchester, particularly Ben, who's I'm always hassling with for information, and colleagues at Network Rail. Thank you, Dr. Morrison.
Thank you, Dr. Morrison. It's a pleasure to serve with your chairmanship, and I thank my honourable friend, the member for Lee and Atherton, for securing and so ably leading this debate. Mid-Cheshire's towns play an important role in our nation's economy as one of only 2 sources of rock salt, as well as chemical, pharmaceutical and plastics manufacturing. And yet, when I speak to businesses, or speak to anyone, frankly, they tell me that poor transport infrastructure is one of the biggest issues holding back businesses, jobs and investments in Northwich, Winsford and Middlewich. And this is far from a new phenomenon. The Middlewich Eastern Bypass project has been the subject of local campaigns for more than 40 years and was shamefully kicked into the long grass by the previous government, despite previous promises to fund it. Campaigns for better sustainable transport, such as more frequent rail services from Northwich and Winsford, a station for Middlewich, and I sympathise with my honourable friend's point, Middlewich being the largest town in Cheshire without a railway station, or frankly, a functioning bus service anywhere in the constituency, have hit barriers to progress. And whilst I would love to use my time to ask the Minister to look kindly upon any or all of these projects, although he's welcome to intervene if he'd like to. The reality is the issue is deeper than any one single project. We can and must fix the foundations of our economy, but we must also tackle the structures that systemically disadvantage our region, in particular outside the big cities, from infrastructure investment. On this, I will limit myself to one point, which I think is fundamental to this debate. The Green Book, developed by the Treasury as the government's primary guidance for evaluating and appraising public sector projects on value for money, utterly fails to adjust for regional disparities. The reality is that as of right now, salaries are higher and high-value sectors are more likely to be located in London and the South East than they are in the North West. So on a like-for-like basis, it will always be easier to demonstrate a higher return on investment on a project here in London than it will be in my constituency, and that's a problem. It's a problem because it undervalues the benefit of economic regeneration or better social cohesion, and it underprices the exacerbating effect it has on London's housing crisis, the pressure on its public services, and the benefit that will be brought by distributing growth across the country. IPPR North estimated in 2020 that on transport alone, if the North had seen the same per-person investment as London over the last decade, it would have received £66 billion more. I know the Chancellor has announced a review of the Green Book, and I urge the Minister to exercise whatever influence he has to make sure that this moment is seized to finally fix this issue that has been a barrier to growth for so long. Our region, from our big cities to our small towns, from our industrial powerhouses to our rural hinterland, is ambitious for our future. We're hungry to play our part in our country's economic recovery. We're impatient for the government to see our potential after so many years of under-delivered promises. This government has finally got us facing in the right direction on valuing and investing in our bus network, on making sure that railways deliver for passengers and not shareholders, and they're progressing devolution in Cheshire and Lancashire that will finally give us the powers we need to set our own transport investment priorities. I hope that the Comprehensive Spending Review and the Green Book review are opportunities to go further, not just to talk about handing power and money to the regions, but to set the rules to make sure that it happens.
Smith. Conor Naismith.
Morrison, it is an honour to serve under your chairship, and may I thank my honourable friend, the member for Lee and Atherton, for securing this important debate. Good transport links are a vital component of any economy which aspires to achieve economic growth and good opportunities for its citizens. There is simply no point in having a job for every person if those people cannot physically get to where those jobs are. Now, I'm going to focus my remarks on rail in the time that I have. And if Heathrow is a hub for aviation in the south, for which investment and growth ripples outwards, then Crewe Station is that hub for rail in the north. Crewe provides 360-degree connectivity to all major cities across the UK. And this unrivalled connectivity makes Crewe a vital hub for both passenger and freight rail, uniquely positioned as a gateway to the Midlands Engine, Northern Powerhouse, Scotland and Wales. However, the West Coast Main Line, a vital artery for our region, has been grappling with significant capacity challenges. Reports have shown that there is no available capacity without significantly impacting performance and causing a reduction in timetable resilience, something that I think every member in this place experiences perhaps on a weekly basis. And this leaves little room for additional services, causing frequent delays. The impact of this on rail services affects every single one of our constituencies, and the capacity for economic growth that additional capacity could unlock cannot be understated. Now, we simply require new infrastructure in our region to tackle this problem. The Conservative government's approach to infrastructure has been nothing short of Jekyll and Hyde, where communities and industry simply did not know if it was coming or going. We've seen a stop-start approach to major projects with promises made and then broken, dither and delay, and a lack of active oversight which has seen costs spiral. The management of and decision to cancel HS2 Phase 2A is a prime example of this. This cancellation has not only undermined the promise of greater connectivity for northern towns and cities, but has also left a gaping hole in our region's economic growth prospects. Now, I know that ministers are looking carefully at the situation the government has inherited ahead of the comprehensive spending review, and it would be remiss of me not to once again ask the government if it would consider how new infrastructure connecting the Midlands and the north of England, utilising Crewe Station with the right investment, could be a key driver for connectivity and growth in any plan to address these capacity challenges that I have outlined. And, Chair, it is absolutely clear to me that better connectivity between our towns and villages and our major cities in the north can be a major lever in our efforts to create those opportunities that our people need and deserve to fulfil their potential. And that is what people elected a Labour government to do.
David Baines. And it's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship this morning. I'd like to thank my honourable friend, the member for Lee and Atherton, for securing this debate, which is a popular topic in our region, as you can see. For decades, we've suffered cuts to bus routes, unreliable train services and fragmented transport planning, and it's had an impact on economic growth and things sometimes overlooked, but I'm pleased to hear mentioned already, including social isolation and the impact on vulnerable groups who rely on public transport, and in places like St Helens, buses in particular. 82% of all public transport journeys in the Liverpool City region are made by bus, but our region, including St Helens North, has been hit hard by the national decline in bus services. Since 2020, we lost 15 routes, and much of St Helens North is rural. The cuts have left many areas, such as Rainford, relying on infrequent, heavily subsidised services. Across the entire Liverpool City region, a staggering 6 million service miles have been withdrawn since 2018, directly impacting our residents. For 40 years, since Thatcher's failed deregulation experiment, we've suffered a system where private operators dictate routes based on profit rather than public need. As leader of St Helens Council before becoming an MP, I was a member of the Liverpool City Region Combined Authority and a strong supporter of us pursuing bus franchising, bringing our buses back under greater public control. And I'm delighted to say that thanks to Metro Mayor Steve Rotherham and other local leaders, including St Helens leader Anthony Burns, from September 2026, St Helens will be the first area in the Liverpool City region to benefit from publicly controlled bus services. This means that routes, fares and timetables will be set by the Combined Authority, not dictated by private companies. Passengers first, not profit. The story is similar when it comes to our rail network, with delays and cancellations plaguing too many people who are reliant on trains to travel for work or leisure. And the state of some of our stations is frankly not good enough either. In particular, when it comes to accessibility. In 2025, it is surely not too much to expect that every station should be fully accessible to all passengers. Yeah. It's a scandal that stations including Garswood and Earlstown and St Helens North don't have step-free access. I know this is something local Labour councillors, campaigners and our Metro Mayor are all keen to fix, and they have my full and ongoing support, and I'd be grateful if the Minister could share his view on this either in summing up or outside of this debate. Mr Chair, St Helens North and our wider borough is in a great location in one strong city region and bordering another with both the M6 and M62 and major rail routes running through it. With affordable and reliable public transport, there's no limit to the growth that we could unlock. As in so many things, all we're asking for is fair funding and the opportunity to fulfil our potential.
Kirith Entwistle.
Thank you, Dr. Morrison. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairship, and I thank my honourable friend, the member for Lee in Atherton, for organising this crucial and popular debate. Improving transport connectivity in Bolton is a priority that matters deeply to me, and I am proud to join fellow North West MPs in fighting for a better, fairer transport system for my constituents. A good transport network does more than move people, it moves society forward. It connects us to education, to jobs, to businesses that drive our economy, and to the family, friends and communities that shape us. It's the foundation stone of a thriving society, because if we get our transport infrastructure right, everything else follows. But for too many in Bolton, transport isn't a bridge to opportunity, it's a barrier, and a barrier with real consequences. No child in Braitmet should have to miss an after-school club because they can't find a bus. No college student in Little Lever should have to turn down an apprenticeship because fares are too high. No adult in Bromley Cross should have to miss a job interview because their trains are cancelled again. For too long, underinvestment in transport has held Bolton's communities back. Loneliness and isolation among young and elderly people are at an all-time high, and we know that good transport can mean the difference between precious time spent with loved ones or another day spent alone. But complicated routes and unreliable services are leaving pensioners and teenagers stranded, isolating not just individuals but entire communities. When transport in Bolton fails, everything else suffers. That's why, since my first speech in Parliament, I've called for Metrolink to be extended to Bolton, and that call remains urgent. Metrolink is expanding, yet Bolton, one of Greater Manchester's largest towns, remains forgotten. For those who say our rail services are already good enough, I invite them to catch a train from Bolton late at night or on weekends, or indeed on their first day of work and be met with a council train, much like I experienced on my first day travelling down to this place. A third of all trains into Bolton arrive late, and for TransPennine Express, it's almost half. Bolton residents deserve better, and I look forward to working alongside Mayor Andy Burnham and the Greater Manchester Combined Authority as we build the business case for this long overdue extension. Members for Morecambe and Lonsdale and also St Helens North mentioned accessibility, and I think we also desperately need to think about parents with prams who also get left out. When we fix the rail system, we empower towns like Bolton to thrive. And of course, it's not only about rail. In just 18 months, the B network has been a huge step forward for Bolton, proving what's possible when people, not profit, come first. Finally, we must fight for regional fairness. In London, over 60s travel for free. In Greater Manchester, they do not. Why should older people in the North West settle for less? I'll push to introduce free travel for over 60s in Greater Manchester because affordable transport helps older people stay active, connected and independent. Dr Morrison, as North West MPs, we're united in our fight for a better, fairer transport system. Better transport means stronger businesses, better transport means connected communities, and better transport means a fairer, thriving North West region. When transport works, everything else follows. And I sincerely hope the Minister agrees with me and that he will commit to making collaboration on improving Bolton transport and North West transport a priority.
Andy McNay.
Thank you, Dr Morrison. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairship, and congratulations to my honourable friend from Lee in Atherton for securing this very, very important debate. And I did originally prepare a very lengthy speech which laid out in great detail, and eloquent detail, I should say, the huge numbers of issues we have in Rosendale and Darwin around transport, be that a challenge of simply walking or cycling to school or work, our patchy bus services in isolated villages, our congested, unsafe and potholed roads, and of course our railway connections or lack of them. Darwin's could generously be described as wildly unreliable, whilst Rosendale is the only local authority area in the north with no commuter link at all. So I look with envy to my friends with merely unreliable services. Time does not allow for a full explanation of all these issues, but perhaps it is clearly unnecessary, as it's clear from this debate that this picture is one shared and understood by colleagues here, and I'm sure the Minister recognises it too. We're all too familiar with cut-off small towns and villages with so much unmet potential, yet the investment never seems to come our way. We know the problems and the legacy we've been left. We know the massive benefits that true transport connectivity can deliver. But we also know the solutions. This government has made a start with investment in rural bus services and pothole repair, whilst committing to some long-standing regional rail priorities. But the question remains as to how we make sure that left-behind towns get the connectivity they need to unleash their full potential. The previous government and the systems they put in place manifestly failed to do this. But under this new government, I believe we have two big opportunities to do things differently and deliver the change the North West needs. As my honourable friend from Mid-Cheshire eloquently put and brilliantly put, the Green Book is a massive issue. It's had a long-term and sustained bias towards wealthier areas. We have to change this. The Treasury review is a huge opportunity to us. We must ensure that this is done with true ambition and not just tweak the rules. The existing bias must be removed and the long-term strategic impacts fully recognised, as opposed to overvaluing short-term return. But we also need to ensure that social well-being and enabling aspects of projects are properly valued. Indeed, why not actually bias projects towards deprived areas? Yeah. And we also need to recognise that guidelines are just guidelines, and there are entrenched cultures within appraisal mechanisms that, despite what guidelines say, will tend to default to outdated BCR metrics. So this is a huge opportunity that we must grasp, and I'm really glad that I think as a North West we speak with one voice on this. And of course the other great opportunity we have is devolution. The North West could be the first region in England where we have a full set of elected mayors with devolved budgets. This offers us a chance to join up our transport investment across the north. We have seen what innovative transport thinking can do in Manchester. Imagine what could be achieved across the north with a fully devolved regional transport budget and mayors working together to unlock our potential. I find that possibility hugely exciting, but I also worry that opportunistic and self-interested local politicians may try and derail this process. For instance, the Reform candidates in Lancashire County Council elections are standing on a platform opposing devolution. They are defending a status quo that may be in their interest, but which manifestly does not meet the interests of residents of Lancashire. What madness. Absolutely. We need to reject this pessimism and put North West back in the fast lane. Yeah. It is in small towns like Rosendale and Darwin that the next election we won and lost. We cannot be left behind as our cities forge ahead. Truly integrated transport can connect our futures, and I believe this government and our empowered communities can grasp that opportunity.
Sarah Russell.
Thank you, Dr. Morrison. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship. Now, in my local area of Congleton constituency, we have had a large amount of housing growth in the last few years, and we expect to have a large amount more. My constituents are not NIMBYs. They absolutely recognise that it is a huge problem that young people cannot afford to leave home in my area. It is a huge problem that there are an absolute shortage of care workers in my area alongside an older population, that we do not have sufficient nurses, we don't have enough teachers. We need key worker housing. Yeah. But what we also need is the infrastructure to go with it. Yeah. So in my local area, transport really primarily is about roads. It's a series of small towns and villages, and people drive between them as much as they possibly can. I live in my constituency, and so I despair of the potholes in exactly the same way as my constituents do. Our roads are dark, they are dangerous, and far too many of our young people are dying on them completely needlessly. The A500 is a complete mess. The A34 is the major road to Manchester. Lots of people commute on it. It is a single lane. It is unlit. It is frequently flooded. It's completely dangerous, and it's a disaster. I could carry on ad infinitum. The only other road I'm going to mention, though, because there are so many I could list, is the Middlewich Bypass, which would unlock major employment opportunities and that we need the government to fund. Now, when I talk to young people or or other people who can't drive in my area, the major area of transport they talk about is buses. And I had the pleasure of talking to Shipton Explorer Scouts about the experiences of trying to use buses in our local area. They talked to me about buses that become so full that they simply drive past them on the way to school and won't pick them up. There aren't enough services and they simply don't stop. We've also, if you try to take, for instance, a bus from Allstager to Royal Stoke or Leighton Hospitals, it will take you nearly an hour. It's only 9 miles. If you try to take what might be one of the most important journeys you're ever going to do, for instance, from Holmes Chapel to one of our local hospices, again, it will take you a really long time. There's no direct bus, for instance, from Congleton, a town of 30,000 people, to Macclesfield Hospital, which is our nearest major general hospital. These are really fundamental services. We want to invest in the NHS, and it's vital that we do so, but it is no point in us having additional appointments if people simply cannot get to them. Coming on to trains, I mean, don't even get me started on the trains in my constituency. They are unbelievably unreliable. There have not been Sunday services in reality for literally years now. Congleton's last train from Manchester is at about 9 p.m. on a Saturday night. I reiterate, this is a town with 30,000 people. Sandbach, a town of 20,000 people, has no accessible route across to the platform, so people with disabilities, with buggies and with luggage, because it is a route to Manchester Airport, simply cannot get there and have to go backwards to Crewe in order to make the journey to Manchester. It's absolutely crackers. Now, I could talk about all of this in even more detail and ad infinitum, but I really want to talk about how incredibly short-sighted the decisions are that have been made about transport investment historically. I'd reiterate the comment that my colleague from Mid Cheshire made about we'd have had £66 billion more in the last decade alone if we'd had the same per-person investment as London. I don't want to take money away from London. I want us to have a thriving capital, but I want my constituents to be able to get there, and I also want them not to have to. I want them to have the opportunities in my constituency and in the wider Northwest in the first place, and then I want them to be able to access them. Thank you.
Michael Wheeler.
Thank you, Dr Morrison, and it's a pleasure to serve under you today. And I want to thank my neighbour, the Honourable Member for Lee and Atherton, for securing this debate all about connectivity, and we are well connected, as I'm sure she appreciates. Efficient, affordable and accessible transport options are crucial to the North West workers, economy and the ability to unlock growth. A well-connected transport system broadens access to opportunities and enhances our region's competitiveness. Transport infrastructure and the affordability of options directly impacts the jobs that people are able to take, where they are able to live, and their access to essential services, as so many of us here today have commented on. And this is particularly true for those living in commuter belt towns and suburban areas, like in my constituency of Worsley and Eccles. We must do more to ensure that different modes of transport on offer are interconnected, ensuring smooth and efficient journeys and making it as easy as possible for everyone to move around our region. Driving remains the most popular mode of transport in Worsley and Eccles, but high levels of congestion are a real issue for all of us, including rush hour commuters of all forms. An improved public transport system can reduce the strain on our roads, benefiting all commuters, including those for whom driving will remain the most appropriate form of transport. As a North West MP, like all of us here, who regularly comes down here to London, I can see with my own eyes what can be achieved with proper investment, funding and government focus for our transport system. In comparison, as one small comparison, from Eccles in my constituency to Piccadilly in Manchester, you have 1, maybe 2 trains an hour on a main commuter line. Surbiton, South London, into Waterloo, 10 an hour. This is a world of difference and makes trains a viable option for many people as an integral part of our network. I'm going to finish with a couple of points. Delivering greater transport connectivity is one of the most effective tools, and I'm sure this government recognises that we have available to us to increase vital access to opportunities, deliver the growth we all need that will underpin all of our services, and fundamentally improve the living standards of everyone we are here to represent. And whilst in Greater Manchester we are making great progress via the expansion of the B network, including the rollout of tap-and-go contactless ticketing and daily and weekly fare caps, which are coming this weekend, we must go further, bring trains into that and deliver the comprehensive interconnected transport system that will really deliver the benefits that we have all been talking about. It is absolutely vital that we continue on this mission to expand and improve our transport networks so that everyone across the whole of our region can benefit from them, but not just from getting around easier, but from getting to those jobs, from making everywhere a viable place to live, to attract investment and really deliver on the potential that we all know that our region has.
Yeah. Sarah Hall.
Thank you, Dr Morrison. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, and I congratulate my honourable friend Leon Atherton for securing this absolutely crucial debate. Constituencies like mine have long faced the challenges of poor connectivity. Warrington South is located at the crossroads of the North West, strategically placed between Manchester to the east and Liverpool to the west. Our town is successful, and it's a desirable place to live and has grown considerably in size over recent years. Sadly, investment in transport infrastructure has just not kept up. Congestion on the roads, limited, poor quality crossing points over the Manchester Ship Canal, ageing infrastructure and unelectrified rail lines. Towns like mine deserve better. It is critical to understand how poor connectivity is constraining growth, limiting our potential and leaving us behind. Uncertainty over infrastructure projects like Northern Powerhouse Rail, slimmed down projects like HS2 and delayed projects such as the Western Link Congestion Relief Road are part of the problem. According to data published at the end of last year, every region of the country falls behind London in public spending on transport per head. The capital sees around £1,313 per person, with the North West receiving only £729. That's a shocking £584 difference. The North-South divide in practice once again. A report by Transport for the North revealed 1/5 of people living in Northern England are prevented from participating in the opportunities and communities around them due to poor connectivity and mobility. The focus must not only be on the big cities, but it must also include towns like Warrington and indeed Leigh. Investment in transport infrastructure can be transformational. It can act as a catalyst for growth. It can unlock potential and drive forward the government's plan for change. It must be a coordinated effort, better linking our communities and recognising the contribution that our towns and villages make to the wider economy and the potential that they have to offer. We cannot allow the transport challenges of the past to restrict our potential in the future. With the right investment in the right places, we have the opportunity to grow the national economy and grow our local economy.
Phil Brickell.
Thank you, Dr Morrison. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairship. And let me congratulate the honourable member for Leigh and Atherton for securing this crucial debate on transport connectivity in the North West, an issue which impacts the day-to-day lives of so many of my constituents and indeed those across the whole region. And ours is a region which, frankly, historically has been neglected when it comes to transport. But I want to begin with a positive by reiterating my wholehearted support for the electrification of the Bolton to Wigan train line, properly funded under this Labour government, and also welcoming the extension of the excellent Greater Manchester B network out towards my constituency. Given that other members have spoken so eloquently on planes, trains and automobiles already, I will focus my remarks on a particular issue in my Bolton West constituency, the Halton Park housing development. Halton Park is a significant development, but it suffers from a critical oversight, a lack completely of sustainable transport options. Public transport links are virtually non-existent locally, which will force future residents to rely almost entirely on cars and snare up already overly congested roads for my constituents. Now, I'm sure colleagues will agree with me that we should not be rubber stamping major housing projects without properly considering how people will get to work, to school, and accessing sustainable essential services locally in an accessible and convenient manner. In Bolton West, we already have severe congestion at 4-lane ends in Hulton, where traffic bottlenecks daily and pedestrian facilities are extremely limited. The recent proposal for 2 additional housing developments in Lee, one of which is particularly large, will only compound this issue. Now, to be clear, I do wholeheartedly support the government's housing plans, which are necessary after the previous Tory government sat on their hands for 14 years. As a country, we've built 4.3 million fewer homes than comparable countries since the Second World War, and house prices are now 8.3 times the average income, pricing many of my constituents out of home ownership. But we must strive to deliver these new homes in a way that does not force residents into car dependency and exacerbate existing congestion issues. The Hulton Park development is, for me, emblematic of a broader failure to link transport planning and house building, and crucially, economic growth. We must ensure that new developments are served by cycle, pedestrian, bus, rail and tram networks from the outset, rather than as an afterthought. And we should be planning how to mitigate existing congestion before spades are in the ground. This is about more than convenience. It's about the future of our towns and our cities. It's about delivering economic growth by ensuring connectivity between new developments and workplaces. And it's about reducing emissions, improving air quality, and ensuring everyone has fair access to transport. So I urge the Minister, let's build the homes we need, but let's build them with the infrastructure they deserve.
Yeah. Well done, everybody, which has meant everybody has got in. I call Lib Dem spokesman Tim Farron.
It's an honour to serve under your guidance this morning, and also an honour to follow on from a debate led admirably by the member for Lee and Atherton, and many other colleagues across the North West making excellent points on behalf of their constituencies and on behalf of the North West as a whole, which is of course the greatest region on planet Earth. Home to the greatest towns and cities, and indeed the greatest and most beautiful landscape that we have to offer. Birthplace of the Industrial Revolution, and yet it is appalling that our region performs 6.8% below national average when it comes to productivity. Indeed, the only regions of the United Kingdom that are productive above the national average are London and the South East. And that's because over the last 60, 70 years, we have become a steadily unipolar country. And the North West, like lots of other parts of the UK, have been undermined. We saw levelling up on behalf of the last government, some admirable aspects to it, but essentially, dare I say, it felt like a whole load of pork barrel with no strategy. And so let's hope we can have some strategy. The cancellation of HS2 was the, if you like, the summing up of that lack of a strategy. And I completely agree with the Honourable Member for Blackley and my Honourable friend next door for Morecambe and Luzo, who talk about HS2 being about capacity and not about speed. Brackets, if we were to have a proper HS2, a mirror line, the West Coast Main Line is the most congested rail line in Western Europe. If it was to be upgraded, it was to be replicated, that would give us the opportunity to reopen many stations along the existing main line. I'm going to throw out T-Bay, Shap and Millthorpe just for 3. But just think also about the fact we need to think more than about how important it is the North West relates to London, and also about how the North West relates to other parts of the north of England. So East-West connectivity is absolutely crucial. What we used to call HS3, Northern Power Rail, that is hugely significant. We want to see and hear more about it. I'm bound to say, as an MP in Cumbria, that often we talk about the North West, we seem to stop thinking about anything that exists north of Junction 32. And it does exist, I can confirm, Dr Morrison. And in particular, I would love the Minister to focus very much on the A66, which is connectivity, hugely important road. It's the link between the A1M and the M6. It connects the ports in the east and the west of this country. In a parallel universe, it would have been a motorway. And for 12 miles, it's a single carriageway where there are hideous numbers of deaths, and they're always concentrated in that small section. I want to urge him and other ministers to say yes to the A66 upgrade as soon as possible. Everybody in my neck of the woods is on tenterhooks and waiting to hear. Likewise, the work that has to be done on the M6 at near junction 38, massively important to the whole road motorway network. Nevertheless, the people of T-Bay must not be isolated during this work, and I'd ask him to pay special attention to National Highways' so far inadequate levels of mitigation, as those 8 bridges have to be replaced in the coming years. It's also important for us to talk about trains and to think about what train services are like across the whole of the North West. I want to just point out about Avanti and Avanti's failure to serve the northern half of the North West adequately. It's worth bearing in mind that West Coast Rail managed to only meet its timetable obligations 43.5% of the time. Last year, more than 1 in 20 services were cancelled, and any of us who live north of Preston know that any problem whatsoever in the borders of Scotland or indeed at Glasgow means a train cancelled at Preston. And so Lancaster, Oxenholme, Penrith, Carlisle, Lockerbie, often completely overlooked, and that must stop. I want him also to think very carefully about what can be done to expand existing railway lines to make better use of them. The biggest visitor destination in the United Kingdom outside London is the Lake District. And yet we have a single railway line that goes from the main line into Windermere. It is possible quite cheaply to have a passing loop at Burnieside to double capacity, and I would love the Minister to look at that personally to see if he will agree to that. It'd be my honour to give way, yeah.
I think in the context of the North West, we're all friends on this matter. The Honourable Member probably doesn't know, but the Transport Select Committee a few years ago did a study into North West trains, and they found the schedules, not when they actually run, of trains in the North West were slower when there was a Liberal Prime Minister. Even more surprisingly, it wasn't Campbell Bannerman, it was Gladstone.
Right, well, I'm very grateful. Can I point out there were a lot more railway lines then, and therefore there were more trains to be slow, and it was mostly pre-electricity. So there you go. But I'm very grateful for his point. I would also just focus, because the industrial capability of the west coast of Cumbria, not in my constituency, is significant to the whole of the country's economy. BAE, Barrow, Sellafield on the west coast. The railway lines that serve them, the Furness line, which is we've had seen 2 flooding-related, well, 1 derailment a year ago, 1 other flooding-related near disaster just a few weeks ago. So we need to pay special attention to keeping the Furness line open and upgrading it and electrifying it if possible. And I also would like to make a case on behalf of all my Cumbrian colleagues for the Cumbria coastal line, which needs significant investment. I also want to just point on just briefly about buses. It's great to hear colleagues in metropolitan parts of the North West talking about keeping the cap at £2. But for many of us in areas which are far less well funded and where devolution has not really happened like Cumbria, we're stuck with a £3 cap, and we're worried about that being got rid of altogether as well. Pre the cap coming in, the most expensive bus journey in the United Kingdom was Kendal to Ambleside, costing more than an hour's wage for somebody working in the hospitality sector. I would love the Minister to confirm that the £3 cap will certainly not be raised or got rid of at any time soon. It is my great privilege to represent a very rural area where even when the £3 cap exists, we are in a situation where that's of no good whatsoever, to a fat lot of good, if you haven't got any buses. And so giving our local authority, Westminster Furness Council, the ability to run their own is key to meeting the needs of many rural communities. I'm honoured to chair an outfit called Cumbria Better Connected, where all these issues are fed in on a regular basis. And one of the most important issues for them all is about connectivity and integration between bus and rail. But it is no...
Shadow Minister Jerome Mayhew.
At all. OK, happy to...
Thank you very much, Dr Morrison. It's lovely to see you in the chair. And as ever, I pay tribute to the Honourable Member for Leanne Atherton for securing this debate, and to congratulate all the members, honourable members, who have contributed putting very forceful cases for the North West for transport, and demonstrating through their combined contributions that there are so many shared problems in the region. And I'm going to start. I don't have time, I'm afraid, to mention every single member, so I'm just going to limit it to the Honourable Member for Leanne Atherton, who highlighted that her constituency, and I suspect many others in the area, is a post-industrial commuter belt struggling to cope with the consequential increase in traffic.
and the society suffers from high transport-related social exclusion because of that over-reliance on cars. And there are a number of issues which I'm going to try and mash them all together into 3 headlines in my response. But let's start, first of all, with the positive news, and that's the welcome of devolution of transport policy, which, although it's been implemented by Andy Burnham, the Mayor of Greater Manchester, it was, of course, a Conservative policy which was brought in 2017. So I think, whilst we welcome it, we should share the plaudits. But that B network, which has been a success, and I really welcome it, we've got to recognise that it was expensive. There was £1 billion of government support for that. And that raises quite a big issue, because not only was it £1 billion of support, on an annual basis, from my calculation, it is considerably north of £130 million a year that's coming from central funds in order to support B. And if you look at its parent, if you like, which is Transport for London, that receives in excess of £1 billion a year in order to fund it. So there is a fundamental question here for the Minister, which is, if this is a model for the future, and we see the buses bill coming through the House of Lords at the moment, and I have with me the consultation for GBR and the Railway Fit for the Future, if this is the model for the future, can he give some light on where that increased funding is going to come from? Because it's a good development, it was Conservative policy, but where it gets expanded beyond the large mayoral combined authorities to other combined authorities, then there is inevitably going to be a cost consequence associated with that. And the second issue relating to it is the potential of conflict between regional policy, where you have a strong regional mayor who's saying that they want to, quite rightly, have control over their combined policy on transport, whether it's buses or rail or road, where that butts up against national policy. So we have potentially a directing mind under the Great British Railways, that's intended to be one of its key benefits, coming up against Andy Burnham, for example. So the consultation paper, it references it, but it has absolutely no detail on how those potential conflicts are going to be resolved and who is going to be the final arbiter. And perhaps the Minister will take this opportunity to respond on that. Members have also, in large numbers, called for the reintroduction of the Northern HS2 extension, not focusing on speed, but absolutely on capacity. Now, we have to recognise, again, it does come back to money, that the cancellation of the northern part of HS2 did redirect £19.8 billion into other transport projects for the region. So it's not a comprehensive list, but just to give a flavour of it, £2 billion for the new station at Bradford and the new connection to Manchester, £3 billion for upgraded and electrified lines from Manchester to Sheffield, Sheffield to Leeds, Sheffield to Hull, Hull to Leeds. About £4 billion additional transport funding for the 6 city regions, and £2.5 billion of additional funding for the outside the city regions, as well as £3.3 billion for road improvements, albeit largely pothole. Yes, I will give way. Yep.
My understanding is that in that announcement there was £180 million for Cheshire East Council, but the council leaders were told that it would be sort of weighted towards the back end of the 7 years. They feel very strongly that it was made up money, that it was always predicated on borrowing, and that there was never any real intention to give that money to the North West.
Well, I'm grateful for the intervention. Their concerns were wrong. I had a minor position in the Treasury at the time, and I can assure the Honourable Lady that this was genuine redirection of funds, albeit over a period, as you'd expect with the release of the funds which were associated with the development of HS2 in the northern sector. Just to conclude, so we had £3.3 billion for road improvements, and then an additional £11.5 billion for the Northern Powerhouse Rail from Manchester to Liverpool. So the question, which is easy to miss in opposition but impossible to avoid in government, is where does the government want its money to be spent? Because you can have those widespread improvements if you're using that money, or you can re-divert it to a northern branch of a version of High Speed 2. But it's impossible to spend the same money twice. And if you do want to do both, if the Minister does want to do both, where's the money going to come from? And finally, many members have referred to the disconnect, the seeming disconnect between investment decisions in the South East, London and the South East, and investment decisions elsewhere in the country, and obviously in the North West in particular. And the Honourable Member for Leon Atherton had quite a good phrase on this. I think he said that growth goes where growth already is. And she's right on that. And the last government did take the first step, at least, in tackling what is an injustice, in my view, my personal view, in the Green Book analysis. And that was undertaken in order to unlock some of the levelling up investment, which the Honourable Member from the Liberal Democrats also referred to. But there is a concern, I have a concern, Dr. Morrison, that the new government is, or certainly the new Treasury is, reverting to type, because when the Chancellor of the Exchequer had her growth panic a few weeks ago, it wasn't...
Minister.
Sit down.
May I first of all say it's a pleasure to see you in the chair, Dr. Morrison. I congratulate my honourable friend for raising this important topic today on the connectivity of the North West, an area which is a cradle to so many transport innovations, home to beautiful countryside and to some of our greatest cities and towns. I mean, it's not quite Yorkshire, Dr. Morrison, but it's still a pretty special place. Though kick-starting economic growth is the #1 mission of this government, and the economic performance of the North West is vital to the successful delivery. It is essential that we deliver our plan for change to create more jobs, put more money in people's pockets and help rebuild Britain. But, as I'm sure my honourable friend recognises, you cannot have good growth without the transport connectivity to support it. A truly connected transport network must be designed and built in collaboration with local leaders. And that's why the devolution white paper published last year is so important. It's an opportunity to reset our relationship with local and subnational government and to empower local leaders and mayors to make the right decisions for their communities. And we're already seeing the benefits across mayoral areas with the introduction of the B network in Greater Manchester, alongside mayors in the Liverpool City region and in West Yorkshire who are working towards taking back control of their buses. May I just put on record how pleased I am to hear yesterday that South Yorkshire will also be taking back control of its buses. But the government will be more ambitious still. First, we will make the process for taking buses back into public control faster, simpler, through the Bus Services Bill. Second, we'll give mayors a statutory role in governing, managing and planning the rail network, working alongside Great British Railways. And third, through the English Devolution Bill, we will be putting the roles of mayors on a primary footing, setting out a clear and broad set of powers that will be available to mayors and local leaders. Our transport network has seen decades of decay. Communities have been cut off and shortchanged. Fragmented networks have hindered any meaningful change, and the state of our local roads is a result of past underinvestment. But we are determined to reverse this. An uplift of £200 million secured at the autumn spending review for city regional sustainable transport settlements for 25-26, which was welcomed by mayoral combined authorities, including Greater Manchester and the Liverpool City region, who are receiving over £1.7 billion from the current CRSTS programme. The autumn budget announcement also included a commitment of over £650 million in the local transport funding in 25-26 to ensure that the transport connections improve in towns, villages and rural areas. And a funding uplift of £500 million for 25-26 for highways maintenance. Of that £500 million, the North West region is receiving over £64.8 million additional funding. In the budget, the government confirmed investment of over £1 billion to support and improve bus services and keep fares affordable. Local transport authorities across the North West have been allocated nearly £150 million for 25-26 financial year. This government is committed to improving transport across the North, including boosting rail connectivity from east to west. We're already taking forward the Trans-Pennine Route Upgrade, TRU, which will improve rail performance and support growth in housing by reducing journey times and providing more passenger services on the line between Manchester and York. we're delivering the Manchester Task Force programme, which is central to the government's ambitious multi-billion-pound rail investment across the north. And as announced in the autumn budget, we are maintaining momentum on Northern Powerhouse Rail by progressing planning and design works to support its future delivery. On our strategic road network, we are developing a 5-year third road investment strategy. Couldn't say that there. That will cover the period for 2026 to 2031. This RIS, the Road Investment Strategy, will be published before the end of 2025. Our vision is for a network that connects more people to more places, making our day-to-day journeys easier and simpler, building a network that can attract investment, whether it's through boosting efficiency or unlocking land for development. The Integrated National Transport Strategy will be published this year, and it will set a long-term vision for transport in England, focusing on how transport should be designed, built and operated to better serve all people who use it and enable them to live fulfilling lives. We'll develop the strategy through collaborative and open engagement with all stakeholders and people who use transport. Now, it's impossible for me to cover everything that was raised today, but let me just touch on a few points. On Northern Rail, look, it's been made really clear to Northern's management that the current performance is not acceptable, and that's why Rail North Partnership, through which the Department of Transport and Transport for the North jointly manages Northern's contract and issued it with a notice of breach of contract. This has required Northern to produce a detailed plan to improve its services. On HS2, look, transport is an essential part of our mission to rebuild Britain, and I'm committed to delivering infrastructure that works for the whole country. And of course, improving rail connectivity across the Midlands and the North. And my ministerial colleagues and I are carefully reviewing the position we have inherited on HS2 and wider rail infrastructure. And what I'd say to the member opposite in terms of the previous government's commitments on investment, I'll just remind him about that £22 billion black hole, which he left this government to pick up the pieces. I won't give way. On access for all, we acknowledge that step-free access remains low across Great Britain, which is why Access for All programme is working to address. The Greater Manchester area, I won't give way, I've got a lot of points, I'm happy to have a conversation with members afterwards. The Greater Manchester area has around 50% of stations that already have step-free access, and this is approximately actually double the national average. We remain committed to improving the accessibility of the railway and recognise the valuable social and economic benefits that this brings to communities. However, the programme continues to be heavily oversubscribed, so we welcome opportunities for external funding to improve the accessibility of the network. On the Green Book, the objective of the Treasury's review of the Green Book is to understand whether it's being used in a way that ensures fair, objective and transparent appraisals of proposals outside of London and the south east of England. And DfT officials are working closely with the Treasury on this review and will take forward any relevant actions following its conclusion. Finally, just to say thank you very much once again to my honourable friend for raising this important issue today, and I hope that I've been able to reassure her that we recognise the importance of transport connectivity across the North West. That's why we're investing, and that's why we're devolving to local leaders, and I look forward to continuing to work with her and other honourable members on this key issue.
Thank you, Dr Morrison, and thank you for chairing this debate. There's not much time, so I probably won't go through everyone's contribution, but I really, really do want to pay thanks to everybody that's attended and everybody that's made such valid points about how we improve our transport infrastructure for the North West. And I just hope going forward that we can all work together as one voice, cross-party, with our Minister and with this government to get those improvements that we desperately need. But thank you.
The question is that this House has considered improving transport connectivity in the North West. Does many of that opinion say aye? Aye. To the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Order, order.